Hi, so I'm going to give you some basic demonstration of visual effects and compositing. Things like green screen removal or chroma keying, site extension, motion tracking, motion stabilizing, and 3D tracking and incorporating 3D object in your footage. So this type of thing actually takes time to composite, so that's why what I've done is I have pre-recorded the entire thing, and I'm giving you a very basic introductory demonstration of how to do it. And along with the demonstration, I'm also going to show you some of my earlier work as examples. So this is After Effects, one of the widely used visual effects and compositing software in the industry. So basically what I have here is a green screen footage downloaded from YouTube. Now this is a very ideal example of a green screen footage. I mean, the green is evenly lit up here, and this is how you actually shoot if you want to do green screen color keying, like in a proper studio environment with proper light. Now the first thing that I'm going to do is, obviously I'm going to apply the green key removal effect, which is for After Effects is called key light. So let's select the green color, and when I do that, it appears like the job is done. I mean, if I turn on the color matte, it seems like the job is already done, but actually that is not the case. I mean, if you turn on this option called combined matte, then what you're going to see is there are gray pixels in the darks and also in the white. Now these white areas are actually those areas which is the completely visible or opaque area part of the footage, and the dark areas are going to be completely keyed out or going to be completely transparent. Now these gray unwanted gray pixels that we have, that are going to become semi-transparent areas. So obviously the first thing we need to do is we need to do some tweaking to clean up the blacks and the whites. And now for that, what I'm going to do is we are going to clip the black and the white just a little bit, to get rid of those unwanted gray noise pixels. And once we have done that, it seems like now we have a clean color keying. But we are going to keep some of the semi-transparent areas around the edges of the hair, because we need this. So once we are done with that, now what I'm going to do is we are going to add a background layer. Now for that, I have a still image of a forest. Now if we add that and if we scale it up, actually what I can see is around the edges of the character we have this kind of black outlines which is appearing. Now for that we need to do a little bit of tweaking again. So we have this option which is called screen shrink and grow. Now I'm going to shrink the edges a little bit, and by doing that I'm losing a little bit of information. So for that I'm going to add a little bit of screen softness to get a little bit of feathering in the edges. And once we have done that, it seems like now we have a fairly clean color keying. And the first effect I'm going to apply in the background layer is camera lens blur, and maybe I'm going to change the value a little bit. Maybe this much is enough. And after that I'm going to drop some foreground elements, like this bush, maybe in the left bottom side. maybe another one here on the right. I can just simply again, these are only still layers, still images, and what I can do is I can simply flip them horizontally to get some variation if needed. And again, as these elements are in the foreground, I'm again going to add some camera lens blur to it, so that only the character stays in the complete focus, and all the other elements becomes out of focus. Maybe I can add two different values. Maybe for the left one I can make it a little bit more blurry, so that it seems like this one is more in the foreground, close to the camera. So just adding some variations to it. And after that, what I can do is I can apply a color level. This is basically to adjust the brightness value of the layer. Now I'm going to make this one a little bit darker. Basically what I want is the maximum highlight goes to the face of the character. Now maybe to create something like an atmosphere, or just to mimic the reality, maybe I'm going to add a little bit of light and dark variation in this scene. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a haze layer behind the foreground layers. So to do that, I'm going to create a adjustment layer, and then I'm going to create a mask region. So I'm going to create a ellipse mask here, and so this is going to be the area where the atmospheric haze or fog is going to be. So once I've created the layer, now I'm going to apply a level effect to adjust the color levels, and then I'm going to feather out the edges, so I can get a soft fall off of the light. So this is it, basically a very subtle thing, but very powerful, because the light is coming from the upper right side. Now so if I add the light here in this direction, in the same direction, then it looks a little bit realistic. And maybe also I'm going to add a little bit yellowishness in the light. Okay, so far so good. And after that, I'm going to create another layer to add some darkness into the scene in the opposite direction, in the left side. So for that, let's create another adjustment layer, and then again I'm going to create a mask in that the left area, and then I'm going to add another level effect to add the darkness. And yeah, so again I'm going to feather out the edges. Now the entire lighting of the scene isn't flat. Now we have a light and dark variation in the scene. This is necessary because we need to match the lighting condition of the character. I mean, a key light falling on the character from a particular direction, and there is a bounce light on the other side. So when we are compositing the background or the environment, we also need to match the similar type of lighting condition, so that the character blends with the background. After doing all this, all we are left with is to add some final color correction. And for that, I'm going to create another adjustment layer, and maybe I'm going to apply selective color for basic color grading. And yeah, this is it. And these are some examples from my own film, and whatever you are seeing here is just basic image manipulation with the green screen shooting footage of the character. So far what I have seen is basic image manipulation to create an environment in compositing, but there is another thing which we can do, to make the scene more dynamic, or to break the flatness of the scene, which is to add some camera movement in the right now. We can obviously move the camera in left and right and up and down direction, but we can also track in with the camera, and the process for that is generally known as 2.5D, because we are not going to create a 3D environment, right? We are going to use these flat images only, but we can turn these flat images into 3D layer, but they are going to be flat 2D layers only in 3D, three-dimensional environment. So let me show you what 2.5D is. So to create a 3D environment, the first thing we need is a 3D camera. Now we can also select like different focal lengths, and there are other attributes of the camera which is available here. And after that, what we have to do is we have to turn our 2D layers into 3D layers. So what it actually does is it the layer stays two-dimensional, flat two-dimensional layers only, but we can move and rotate those 3D layers in a three-dimensional environment, and also we can rotate the camera. We can create different type of dynamic camera movements. So now what I'm going to do is, in order to create a Z depth in the environment, I'm going to push the layers in Z direction. Like I'm going to select the background layer first, and I'm going to push it far behind the main character, and I'm going to do the opposite with the foreground elements. I'm going to select the bush layers, and I'm going to bring them closer to the camera. So in this way, what we have basically done is we have created a Z space distribution of the layers. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply select the background layer and scale it up to fit our camera frame. And again with the foreground layers, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to scale them down, as they are way too closer to the camera right now. I'm going to scale them down, and I'm going to reposition them as we had composited earlier. And now I can add some camera movement animation, something like this. Actually we can even push it a little bit further. We can make we can actually rotate the camera angle, and we can make it a little bit more dynamic like this. Well, when we are done with the camera movement, there is one final thing which is yet to add, which is adding film grain as an effect, on top of all the layers. This is optional, but what it actually does is, as we are working with static digital imagery, there are no film noise or grains in it. When you shoot something with a real camera, there are going to be some amount of camera noise, and we can fake that. We can fake that to get that extra bit of realism. And what happens is, when we add this, things becomes kind of alive. Those digital still images doesn't look still anymore, because we have it kind of gives us the feeling that it is shot in a camera. And also what it does is it blends the pixels, especially around the edges, and makes it more seamless. So yeah, this is it for this example. This is again another example of 2.5D compositing. Now this one is an example of digital set extension. But for this one, the digital set is a CGI or computer generated imagery. Now this is not still image. So the background of the airport lounge is made in 3D, and then it is rendered and it is composited there. And the background view what we are seeing of the airport, those are all still images. I mean, the planes are animated, those are just only still image of plane which is animated, and all the lights are blinking, those are just simple light blinking animation, and all this reflection and heat distortion on all happening on the surface of the runway. So those things are basically kind of a turbulence effect. And this scene was shot in a blue screen. When you are shooting a low light scene, then it is preferable to use blue screen, because blue screen blue color absorbs more light than the green color, so it is suitable if you shoot it in blue when you are shooting low light scenes. And then I'll show you how the digital 3D set looks like. So this is the 3D set, and the interesting thing is the entire set is built with very basic geometric objects like cube or cylinders, so things like that. So all those shapes are assembled together, and now we have got this 3D set of the airport lounge. And the lighting is done by using HDRI, which is called high dynamic range imagery. Now what it does is I have added this equirectangular map of a similar type of environment, and which is added here as reflection map or environmental map. So all the objects are getting the light and also the reflection from that image, and that's how I have created the image. Also in the final compositing I have added a little bit of extra light reflections, and these foreground chairs, those are also 3D chairs which is added there. And so this is how this scene is made. In this one, only the foreground object is a CG object, and the other two, the midground and the background, those are all simply still images. And this is another example of similar type of 2.5D compositing. Another very essential part of visual effects is tracking a footage or tracking the movement information of a particular footage. And why we need this is, let's say in this example we have some handheld movement of the camera, right? Now let's say if we want to add some element into the scene, let's say I want to add a photo frame there in the wall. Now the problem is that that layer is just going to float there, because there are some movement which is happening in the actual footage, and we need to capture that movement data. So for that we need to track the movement of the footage, and to do that I am going to create these tracker points, and I am going to place them in a place where the color pixels are not obstructed by the characters, which is going to be completely visible throughout the entire duration of the shot. Also it is better to find some area where we have some contrast color information, so that the software can capture the colors properly. Now I'm going to hit the track forward button, and After Effects is going to track the entire footage. What I'm going to do is I'm going to apply the tracking data in a null layer, and then I'm going to parent the photo frame layer with the null layer. So basically what I did here is I have captured the tracking data, the movement data of the actual footage, and I've applied that movement information into the photo frame. So now what you can see is the photo frame is also moving along with the movement of the footage. So this process is called motion tracking. Now we can simply adjust the colors a little bit of the photo and we are done. Another thing we often need to do is instead of tracking the movement of a footage, stabilize unwanted movement from a footage. So for that also we need to track the movement information of the footage. So let's do that. This time we don't need the photo frame, we are just going to track again in that same process. We are going to track the movement information of the footage. After tracking the footage, we are going to hit apply, and what you're going to get is this is basically the reverse process. The footage is stabilized, but the outer region, the frame, is moving. So to fix that, obviously we have to scale the footage up a little bit, and this is it. But this manually tracking process is not always going to help you, because what if there is camera movement in the shot? I mean, then there is already a movement which we need. So in this example what we have is there is a dolly track camera movement, and there are some unwanted camera movement also. So the camera is kind of wobbling and vibrating in places. So we need to remove all that unwanted camera movements. So how we are going to do that? For that we have to use the advanced stabilization process. There's this kind of software offers. In After Effects this process is called warp stabilizing. So if I apply warp stabilizer, and I can just change a couple of settings here, like for the distortion we need only scaling, rotation and position, and yeah, this is it. So if we do that, so after the tracking what we have now is a smooth camera movement without all that unnecessary shakiness of the footage. Now another very widely used and very important tracking process is three-dimensional tracking. So far the tracking we have done, those are done in X and Y direction. Now what if we have to incorporate a 3D object in a footage? Then we need the three-dimensional information of the footage, like the three-dimensional movement information. So I have shot this video with my mobile camera. You need a good quality footage. The tracking region must have to be completely in focus, and there shouldn't be any motion blur. But in this case what I have is a very low resolution blurry footage. So let's see what can we get out of it. So this time we are going to use this option called camera tracking, and if you are going to do that, After Effects automatically tracks the entire footage and creates all these three-dimensional points for tracking points for us. Now what we have to do is, now we have to find a connection of three tracking point which can actually represent our three-dimensional grid plane of the floor. Now once we have found that, we can simply create a null object and a 3D camera, And once we have done that, now what we can do is we can import 3D object, and this entire thing is normally done in 3D softwares, but in this case, just to simplify the entire thing, I am doing it inside After Effects only. So if I import a 3D object into the scene, now it is going to look like that object actually exists in that 3-dimensional space. Now we might have to adjust the rotation a little bit, and this is it. Now what I can see is the tracking is not done perfectly. Because of that, we have some amount of distortion in the object, and it actually happened because of the poor quality of the footage. Now we can simply add a material to the object. We can create a matte shadow ground plane, which is basically going to cast the shadow of the key light, and we can create After Effects light also. Like we have created a 3D camera, we have 3D lights, and we can match the direction of light, and also we can mimic the shadow which is actually there in the footage. So once we have done that, we can simply bring as many as 3D object we want into the scene. We can apply different materials to it and apply a similar type of environmental map to basically match with the light condition of the footage, and maybe the 3D objects are animating. So basically all I am saying is, once you have the tracking data, you can do any type of CG stuff you want, and that's why in my film I did this.
NROC.
And apart from all these, like bringing CG elements into a footage or image manipulation, set extension, all that, you can build up CG environment entirely in a 3D software, and also you can place your character into the 3-dimensional world. So these are the very key practices of visual effects and compositing. Hopefully this entire demonstration was informative for all of you. Thank you.